How does a doctor and experienced outdoorsman vanish on a well-marked trail with a pack full of supplies including a GPS and a cell phone, only to turn up deceased in an area already investigated by rescuers, and all without leaving a trail in the snow? What is up, YouTube? My name is Trinity, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. Today we are going to be talking about the bizarre disappearance and death of Dr. James McGrogan. James McGrogan was a 39-year-old doctor from Mishawaka, Indiana, who was going on a ski trip with 3 of his friends to Vail, Colorado, located at the base of Vail Mountain in the White River National Forest. The group's plan was to take the Spraddle Creek Trail all the way to Eisman Hut, which was a ski lodge that they were going to stay at. The distance from the trailhead to the actual hut was about 4 miles as the crow flies, but because of elevation change and difficult terrain, it was closer to 8.5 to 9 miles that they would be hiking. There was snow on the ground up to 8 feet deep in some places, and the temperature was about 19 degrees on the morning they left. Everyone was well prepared and experienced in the outdoors. Despite never having gone skiing before, James was very well prepared. He wore a coat, gloves, and boots. His pack also had additional warm clothes in it, provisions of food and water, a GPS, an avalanche beacon, a first aid kit, and his cell phone. And when he got to Vail, he rented a split snowboard which could be converted into a pair of skis, as well as some skins that would allow him to go uphill while cross-country skiing. And on top of all of this, he was a doctor, so he was as well prepared as anyone could be. The group began their hike on the morning of March 14th at about 8:30 a.m. Before leaving, James took a selfie in front of the mountains and sent it to his wife, along with a message that says, "The adventure begins." By about 10 a.m., the group was about 4 to 6 miles away from Eisman Hut. Now, it's beyond here that the events become a little bit muddy as to what really happened. The most accepted version of events is that around 10 a.m., the group wanted to stop and take a breather, but James wanted to keep going. This annoyed his friends as they had been planning this trip for over a year and they were supposed to do it all together. But James chose to keep hiking and continued on to Eisman Hut, and they would either catch up to him when he eventually needed a break, or they would at least all meet up at the hut. However, one of his friends did say after all of this happened that he actually couldn't recall when James split from the group, that they were all together and then James just went out of sight and he vanished. But whichever series of events is true, about an hour after splitting from the group, James made a 16-second phone call to one of his friends that wasn't answered. I don't know if that's because his friends were annoyed with him, so they decided to ignore it, or they just didn't get to the phone in time. No message was left. His friends made it to Eisman Hut around 5:30 that evening, and they quickly realized that James was not there and he hadn't been there. They reported him missing to the Vail Department of Public Safety, who passed on the report to the Eagle Valley Sheriff's Office. A rescue operation was quickly put together, spanning 18 square miles. Initially, rescuers weren't extremely worried about James just because he was experienced and had a lot of supplies on him, so it was more than likely that he had just gotten lost. However, as several days passed with no sign of him at all, they became more and more concerned. Rescuers searched on foot and by snowmobile. The National Guard High Altitude Aviation Training Site from Gypsum, Colorado also contributed 3 helicopters in the search, but nothing was found. Other hikers that had been on the trail the same day that James went missing also said that they didn't see anyone that matched his description. The search was eventually called off 5 days later on March 18th due to inclement weather. However, James McGrogan would eventually be found 20 days later on April 3rd around 1 p.m. around the Booth Falls area. He was found sprawled out on the ice beneath a 700-foot ice fall or waterfall by some skiers. He was about 4.5 miles east of the trail that he and his friends were on, but that is, again, as the crow flies, because of the change in elevation and the deep snow that he had to work through to get to that area, it was likely that he walked 12 to 14 miles. He was wearing his helmet, but his coat, gloves, and boots were all missing, though his coat and gloves were found not far from his body, along with his pack that had all of his supplies inside. When investigators were able to power up his cell phone and his GPS, they learned that there was no sort of damage to them, so for some reason he hadn't used them. His boots have never been located. And I wasn't able to find any information on this, but I am curious what state that his food and water were in, because if they weren't as full as they had been the morning that he left, that could indicate that he survived for several days before meeting this end. Post-mortem examinations found that he had significant trauma to the side of his head, the left side of his chest, and he had a broken femur. And it was concluded that he had died on impact of his fall. By April 7th, the Eagle County coroner ruled the entire case an accident. And telling it to you like this, it feels like it should be a very open and shut case. All of the pieces are there for this to be a natural but tragic accident. Why is this considered a 411 case? There are just little details here and there that don't make any sense when put all together. The most straightforward theory that I could really put together is that at some point after he split off from the group, which, mind you, not everybody can even agree when or how that happened, James began to experience symptoms of altitude sickness, which include trouble breathing and confusion. As a doctor, it's possible he could have recognized these symptoms and then went off trail in order to reach a lower elevation, and that could also be when the phone call was made. Or if he didn't realize what was happening and he was just very disoriented, he could have left the trail just because. Advanced stages of altitude sickness can result in something called high altitude cerebral edema, which causes swelling and bleeding within the brain. Now, not everybody who experiences altitude sickness experiences this. It is in more serious cases. But I am wondering if that's something that could have been present when the coroner did their autopsy, but because there was also additional trauma because of his fall, that maybe it couldn't conclusively be ruled that he had also experienced this edema. And continuing on from there, maybe in his disoriented state, he got himself so lost that he couldn't find his way back to the trail, even though, again, unless he's in a very altered state, wouldn't he be able to follow his own tracks back to the trail? But he gets lost and temperatures start to drop rapidly. He begins to show symptoms of hypothermia, and many of you will know this, that late stage hypothermia, something can happen called paradoxical undressing. When you're cold and hypothermia sets in, your blood vessels constrict to keep your blood closer to your core and away from your skin where it can be bled off. Though over time, these blood vessels, after being constricted for such a long time, they eventually relax from exhaustion, and this causes blood to flood to the surface of the skin and can make a person feel like they are burning up. And in the state of confusion and desperation that the person is usually in by this point of being hypothermic and probably in a very unsafe situation, they begin to take off their clothes in order to try to cool down. And then while doing this, he somehow lost his boots in the snow. And while doing this in his disoriented state, he took off his boots and they were lost. And then he went over the ice fall, and the impact of that fall killed him. He may have been trying to make his way back towards Vale because apparently you could see the lights from the town from the mountain. Rescuers said that you could easily see it from the place that he was found. That sounds all well and good, but then come the questions. Why keep going for so long after leaving the trail? It wouldn't have been easy. Like I said earlier, some patches of snow were up to 8 feet deep. It wouldn't have been an easy hike. 12 to 14 miles, that's much more than he was initially going to do just following the trail. And if he was suffering from altitude sickness or something, would he be in that much desperation that for hours and hours he would just keep plowing through this snow? Wouldn't he have gotten exhausted? In situations where you become lost, also, the main thing that you're supposed to do, unless there's an immediate source of danger, is to stay put, because eventually someone will find you. And again, because there's snow on the ground, there would literally be a trail to you. If you wait long enough, somebody will find you. Now, in the area of Vail, Colorado, there are black bears, there's mountain lions, and there's coyotes. However, I didn't find anything that indicated there was any sort of predation signs on his body. And also, especially if he's in this disoriented state, why would a predator that's desperate enough to go after him just leave him alone? They would be much better at getting through all of that snow than he would be. Would predators like that really go so high up onto the mountain? I'm definitely not saying they can't, but it seems like going through the snow, climbing up to such high elevations, especially where there are a lot of people around because they're skiing there, it seems like the amount of effort to make your way up the mountain to a place where you know people are just to maybe find some prey is a lot more work than your average animal would do. They would probably be more successful hunting at lower elevations. And then comes the thing about his boots. Why were his boots never found? Yes, they could very easily get stuck in the snow, especially if he was struggling to get through especially deep parts of the snow. However, the mountain is not covered with snow year-round. And with this being a missing 411 case, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would have gone there. And it's also a place where people ski because he was found by skiers. Wouldn't those boots have been found somewhere? It's been 12 years since this case occurred. I feel like somebody would have found something by now. Rescuers had already searched the area where his body was eventually found. I'm pretty sure rescuers think that he died that first day, if not maybe the day after. But then how did rescuers in the area miss him? I mean, I guess it's possible that they could have just missed his body. But again, wouldn't there have been at least a trail in the snow to lead to the ice fall where you could look down and literally see his body right there? Or at least some indication, disturbed snow, that somebody was moving around in the area? With helicopters helping the search, they would probably have thermal imaging because a living person or even a deceased one for a while is going to have a hotter signature than the snow around them. If they didn't have thermal imaging, that seems like a big oversight, but I would imagine they probably did. There was also cell service in the area where his body was found, so why not use his cell phone or his GPS? Why not try to make another call to his friends because he had already done it at least once? And then, how were his coat and his gloves found where they were? If he was undressing because of extreme hypothermia, when would he have taken off his coat and his gloves? If he was disoriented and just frantically trying to take his outerwear off, would he really have stayed still long enough to take off his coat and take off his gloves and then throw them over the ice fall and then went down after them without even realizing it was there? Or even more unlikely, did he fall and then while he was falling, take them off and throw them off before hitting the ground and then dying on impact? And even more unlikely and strange, and it doesn't have any logical reason, but was it possible that someone was pursuing him, that he wasn't alone? Did he fall over and then they just threw his gloves and his coat over with him? Or did he get pushed off and then somebody tried to abandon evidence of something happening? Because as far as I know, there wasn't any evidence of a struggle or anything. He just died on impact. Did they then, for some reason, take his boots then? If there was somebody else involved in all of this, I don't think there was. And then how would they avoid leaving a trail? It makes the most sense that he was alone, but then again, it doesn't fit with everything else. I would really like to know the timeline of everything that happened after he split from the group, even though I know we're never going to get those answers. But I feel like the longer he's alive after initially going missing, the more room there is for foul play and stuff like that. I would like to know how coroners do estimate, like, time of death for people that have been out in the cold where decomposition isn't happening at the same rate as it normally would. So theoretically, could he have died the same day that he disappeared, but then look as fresh, for lack of a better word, as he would have if he died, say, 5 days before he was found? I'd like to know how exactly they determine all of that. But let me know what you guys think happened to Dr. James McGrogan down in the comments below. And let me know if you have any suggestions for any additional missing 411 cases or just videos in general. And now for my favorite comment of the last video by SamIam_3. Shark Party. You chose the perfect story to set off Shark Week. I love your commentary at the end of how important sharks are to the ocean. If only more people thought like you, the world would be a better place. Thank you so much for that. It is very sweet and I really do appreciate it. Feels kind of weird reading something like that, like I'm tooting my own horn, which I'm not trying to do, but that was the only comment that was on the Shark Week video. But thank you for commenting. Hey spooky people, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. If you're interested in ways to support the channel, the best ways are always to like, leave a comment, and even share with a friend if you think they'd enjoy my content as well. Tapping that subscribe button like Mothman's Booty is also a great way to show support, and be sure to click that notification bell so you never miss an upload. I have a Buy Me a Coffee now in case you guys would like to donate and follow for any posts and updates for the channel. Donations are never expected but always appreciated, and people that donate will get a shout out in the following video. video. Be sure to check out my Etsy if you enjoy my spooky artwork and would like to buy any in the form of stickers. And if you have a personal spooky story that you'd like me to read in a future video, be sure to send it over to spookychickstories@gmail.com. All of that and my other social media platforms will be listed on my link tree that will be found in the description below, just so you can find everything all in one place. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!